Have you ever wondered what it looks like when heaven decides enough is enough? When the endless cycle of manipulation, confusion, and emotional exhaustion finally reaches its limit. There comes a quiet, sacred moment when the hand of the Almighty moves, not in chaos, not in anger, but in divine precision. A moment when heaven itself closes the door to the one who once drained your spirit and distorted your peace. At first, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like loss. You may find yourself questioning, why now? Why in this way? Yet what looks like abandonment is often divine intervention in disguise. The Lord does not rush, but He is never late. When He closes a door, it is because everything that was meant to be seen, learned, and endured behind that door has already served its purpose. Before we begin this journey, it is a blessing to know from which part of the world you are watching and at what hour of the day God has guided you to this message. Truly, it is a joy to witness how the Lord gathers hearts from every corner of the earth, uniting them in one spirit and in one truth. The narcissist, so confident, so certain of control, does not notice at first when the door begins to close. Their world runs on illusion. They believe that power is eternal, that charm can deceive forever, that emotional control is strength. But heaven watches in silence. There is a verse in the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 18. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. The proud cannot see the warning signs because they are blinded by their own reflection. When the door begins to close, it doesn't slam. It whispers. Little by little, things stop working. The manipulation that once drew sympathy now brings silence. The lies that once turned heads now echo hollow. The people who once defended them begin to step back without explanation. It is not revenge, it is divine order reestablishing balance. You may not realize it at the time, but heaven was protecting you from a future built on deception. There are doors God closes that even prayer cannot reopen because His protection is greater than our desire. Psalm 121 verses 7-8 says, "The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going both now and forevermore." This promise means that when the Lord closes a door, He also guards the hallway that leads to your new beginning. There is a sacred stillness that follows the shutting of a door. You may hear the echo of memories, the faint whisper of the person you once knew. Yet if you listen deeper, there is something else, the quiet voice of the Holy Spirit saying, "Peace, be still." It is in that stillness that healing begins. Sometimes heaven must remove what your heart was not strong enough to walk away from. Divine mercy is not always gentle, it can also be firm. God does not only rescue souls from danger, He rescues them from deception. You were never meant to spend your life begging for crumbs of love. The one who truly loves you does not manipulate, diminish, or confuse you. True love reflects the heart of the Father, patient, truthful, enduring. The narcissist often mistakes grace for weakness. They believe your silence is surrender, your forgiveness is forgetfulness, but grace is the strongest weapon of all. It is what keeps you from becoming like them. When you walked away, it was not a sign of defeat, it was heaven declaring victory over your life. And though they may try to reopen what God has closed, this season has shifted. No key of manipulation can unlock a door sealed by divine authority. The book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 7, reminds us of this truth. What He opens no one can shut, and what He shuts no one can open. When the narcissist realizes the access is gone, confusion begins to set in. Their control was never about love. It was about feeding emptiness. Without access to your energy, your compassion, and your attention, they begin to crumble. But do not look back. Even Lot's wife turned to salt because she looked back at what God was destroying. You are not being called to witness their downfall. You are being called to walk toward your destiny. So if you are standing in that hallway right now, between what was and what will be, take a deep breath. The door is closed, but the journey is not over. The silence you feel is not the absence of love, it is the beginning of restoration. Why were you chosen to leave when others stayed? Why were your eyes opened while others still live under the same illusion, defending what nearly destroyed them? These are the questions that echo in your heart after the storm has passed. It is not pride to ask, it is human. Every soul that has endured manipulation seeks to understand why me. Yet the truth is both simple and profound. You were chosen to leave because heaven saw the weight of your heart and decided you had carried enough. The Lord never calls someone out of bondage without purpose. Each separation is a divine strategy, not a random break in affection. In the book of Exodus, chapter 14, verse 13, Moses told the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." The people of Israel did not understand why they had to leave Egypt in such fear and uncertainty, yet behind the confusion was a divine hand leading them into freedom. In the same way, your separation was not rejection, it was deliverance disguised as heartbreak. You were chosen to leave because your heart still responds to truth. Many hear the truth but cannot bear it. Pride covers their eyes. Yet there was something in you, a spark that refused to die, a quiet prayer whispered on sleepless nights, a longing for peace stronger than the fear of loneliness. That is what heaven responded to. The narcissist could not destroy that spark because it did not belong to them. It belonged to the Creator who placed it inside you from the beginning of time. The book of Isaiah chapter 43 verse 1 declares, "Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine." Those words are not a metaphor, they are a seal. They mean that no manipulation, no lie, and no control can erase your identity in the eyes of the one who formed you. Many who are still entangled with a narcissist believe leaving is betrayal. They say, "But love endures all things." Yes, love endures, but love also discerns. True endurance is not staying in abuse, it is staying faithful to what is holy. The enemy often twists scripture to keep people bound. But the same Bible that speaks of patience also speaks of wisdom. Proverbs chapter 4 verse 23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Guarding your heart is not selfish, it is spiritual obedience. When heaven chooses someone to leave, it is because their purpose cannot grow in poisoned soil. You were not created to walk on eggshells, apologizing for existing, questioning your worth daily. You were created to reflect peace, not to chase it. The Lord saw that your compassion was being exploited, that your empathy had turned into exhaustion. So He stepped in, not because you asked loudly, but because He heard the quiet breaking within you. Think back to the moments before the separation. Do you remember the unease that began to build, the sense that something unseen was shifting? That was the Spirit preparing you. Heaven never removes something without preparing something better. But the process feels heavy because faith must rise higher than fear. The narcissist often sees your departure as rebellion. They may accuse you of being cold, heartless, or ungrateful, but remember this: to those who thrive on control, freedom always looks like defiance. Their anger is not proof of your guilt, it is proof that their influence has ended. What happens next is sacred. You will begin to see how every pain taught you discernment. Every tear sharpened your vision. What once looked like chaos begins to reveal divine order. The Lord wastes nothing, not even your heartbreak. Romans chapter 8 verse 28 assures, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." That means even the manipulation, the confusion, and the betrayal were turned into tools of revelation. You learned what genuine love feels like by experiencing its counterfeit. You learned to hear God's whisper because you survived constant noise. You learned that peace is not the absence of problems, it is the presence of truth. You were chosen to leave because your destiny demanded clarity. The longer you stayed in deception, the dimmer your light became. Heaven could not allow that light to go out, for it is needed in this world. Somewhere, someone else will find courage through your story. You may not know their name, but your obedience to leave will one day become their sign to do the same. And while the narcissist mourns the loss of control, heaven celebrates the birth of your freedom. Do not regret the exit. The Red Sea always looks impossible before it parts. And yet, when you walk through it, you will realize the waves that once threatened to drown you were actually forming your path to deliverance. Something greater is awakening in you now. You were never meant to live as a reflection of someone else's pride. You were meant to reflect light itself. What happens when the light that once kept the shadows away suddenly disappears? What happens when the one who fed off control, manipulation, and flattery realizes the source of their energy has left? That is the moment darkness begins to tremble. When you walked away, you might have thought it was over. Yet spiritually, something powerful began. The narcissist's confidence starts to crumble the moment your spirit is no longer available to feed their ego. They built their strength on your compassion. They drew validation from your forgiveness. They mistook your gentleness for weakness and your patience for permission. But when light walks away, darkness panics. There's a passage in the book of John, chapter 3, verse 20. Everyone who does evil hates the light, and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. The narcissist fears exposure more than anything. As long as your presence was in their life, your goodness reflected back the truth they refused to see. You didn't have to speak. Your peace convicted them. Your love made their lies stand out like stains against purity. And when you left, that mirror was gone, leaving them face to face with the darkness within. They will often act as if nothing has changed. Some will even pretend to be happier than ever. They may post, smile, and perform for the world, but inside, there's unrest. The silence you left behind begins to speak louder than any words could. They start replaying every conversation, every gesture, every opportunity they missed to keep control. What was once their comfort becomes their torment. This is the unseen spiritual consequence of pride. Pride builds its own world, but it cannot survive without worship. And when the worship stops, the world collapses. The narcissist begins to sense something they cannot name, an emptiness, a spiritual drought. It is written in the book of Proverbs, chapter 28, verse 1, "The wicked flee, though no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. Without anyone chasing them, they begin to feel chased. Without anyone accusing them, they start to feel guilt." The same mind that once manipulated others now becomes haunted by its own deceit. Do not mistake their loudness for strength. Their arrogance is often a disguise for spiritual decay. When they realize they can no longer reach you, they may try to provoke you sudden messages, false apologies, even dramatic gestures of change. But remember, when darkness feels threatened, it imitates light. It will promise peace just to regain access. This is why discernment is essential. The Lord allows these attempts not to confuse you, but to confirm your growth. You will see clearly now what you once excused. The narcissist does not truly miss you. They miss the version of themselves reflected in your kindness. Without that reflection, they lose the illusion of being good. They may try to replace you quickly, believing another soul can provide the same light, but false lights fade fast. What they find instead is restlessness, a hunger that grows stronger the more they chase attention. This is the moment when the mask begins to crack. For those who wonder whether they should feel pity, remember this: compassion and access are not the same. You can forgive them without letting them return. You can pray for their soul without reopening the door. Jesus himself said in Matthew chapter 10, verse 16, "Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves." Wisdom means knowing when to walk away, and harmlessness means doing so without bitterness. When light leaves darkness, the battle intensifies for a short season. The narcissist may seek to test your boundaries, to pull you back into the storm. But you are no longer who you were. The spirit within you has changed your response. Where once you would explain, now you remain silent. Where once you would defend yourself, now you rest in peace. That silence, that calm, it burns them more than anger ever could. The book of Ephesians chapter 5 verse 11 says, "Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them." The most powerful exposure is not confrontation, it is transformation. Your peace exposes their chaos. Your healing exposes their emptiness. Your growth exposes their stagnation. When the light walks away, darkness does not die instantly. It struggles, fights, and resists. But it cannot win. The separation you feel is not punishment. It is purification. The enemy loses grip the moment you stop feeding the lies and start nurturing your spirit. So if the darkness rages now, if the narcissist's behavior becomes erratic or desperate, do not be afraid. The louder the storm, the closer your breakthrough. Every desperate attempt they make is proof that your absence has power. You are no longer under their shadow. You have stepped into something eternal. And soon they will face the silence of their own making. What happens when the noise stops? When the applause fades, the audience leaves, and all that remains is silence? For the narcissist, silence is not peace, it is punishment. It is the moment when the mask can no longer perform and the soul must face itself. There comes a night when every manipulator, every deceiver, every self-made ruler must sit alone with their thoughts. The room feels colder, the air heavier. Their words, once sharp enough to control others, now echo back at them. The same lies they told so easily now whisper accusations in the quiet. This is not human vengeance, it is divine consequence. The Lord has a way of turning the sound of silence into a mirror for the conscience. In the book of Job, chapter 34, verse 21, it is written, "For his eyes are on the ways of man, and he sees all his steps." Nothing escapes the eyes of the Almighty, not even the thoughts we try to hide from ourselves. When the narcissist sits in that silent room, heaven allows their conscience to grow loud. The very mind they once used to deceive others becomes the instrument of their own exposure. They may try to drown it out. Some will fill their days with noise music, distractions, endless talking, or even new relationships. But deep down, the soul knows when it is under conviction. The silence cannot be escaped. It follows them like a shadow. They cannot rest because peace does not dwell where pride reigns. Isaiah chapter 57 verse 21 says plainly, "There is no peace, says my God, for the wicked." The narcissist's conscience becomes their courtroom. In it, every lie is replayed, every betrayal stands as a witness, and every false promise becomes evidence. No one else is there to judge them, but judgment has already begun. It is not the wrath of God striking with fire. It is the slow, heavy weight of truth settling in. You might wonder if they feel guilt. At first, they do not call it guilt, they call it stress, fatigue, confusion. They will blame others, saying life has been unfair. But beneath the excuses lies a restless spirit. The more they avoid truth, the louder it grows. Eventually, they start hearing the echoes of every voice they silenced, every heart they wounded, every trust they betrayed. And the room that was once their fortress becomes their prison. For you, this is a sacred insight. You may not witness their sleepless nights or their quiet tears, but heaven allows you to know this truth so that you can let go. The same God who saw your tears sees theirs. The same justice that comforted you will confront them. Do not seek revenge, seek release. Romans chapter 12 verse 19 reminds us, "Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, 'It is mine to avenge. I will repay,' says the Lord." When you no longer carry the desire to prove anything, you are free. The silence that torments them is the same silence that heals you. For you, it is peace. For them, it is revelation. Heaven uses silence differently for every soul. For those in truth, it restores. For those in deception, it exposes. Over time, the narcissist begins to realize that their charm no longer works, their control no longer satisfies, their confidence no longer feels real. Their conscience grows heavier with every attempt to suppress it. And though they may still appear composed in public, inside they are unraveling. This unraveling is not punishment, it is mercy. It is the first invitation to repentance. But pride is a stubborn wall, and few will accept that invitation easily. They would rather sit in torment than bow in humility. Yet even in their resistance, God's grace remains. He allows conviction not to destroy them, but to call them home. And while their world grows quieter, your world begins to bloom again. The same silence that exposes them begins to comfort you. The nights that were once heavy with sorrow become filled with rest. You start to hear new whispers, gentle ones from the Spirit, guiding you toward peace. The narcissist's loud conscience will eventually force them to choose: humble themselves before truth, or continue the cycle of denial. You do not have to watch the outcome. Your part is finished. The courtroom of heaven is fair and final. So when you think of them, Do not wish for their pain. Wish for their awakening. Pray not that they suffer, but that they finally listen to that loud, honest voice that was buried for too long. For silence has a way of separating the pretender from the penitent. And soon, that silence will give birth to truth. Have you ever noticed how some people can look at themselves in the mirror every day, yet never truly see who they are? For the narcissist, this is their greatest fear, the moment they are forced to face the reflection they have avoided for so long. For years, they have lived behind masks made of charm, intellect, and control. They believe that if they could make others see them as powerful, desirable, or untouchable, then they could escape the truth that waits within. But when the illusion collapses and there are no more hearts left to deceive, the mirror finally becomes unavoidable. The narcissist's entire world depends on reflection. They survive by seeing themselves through others' admiration, fear, or attention. Without that external validation, their sense of identity fades. It is why they cling so desperately to control, because without it, they must meet the emptiness they have tried to bury. That emptiness is not simply loneliness. It is the absence of truth, the absence of light. In the book of James chapter 1 verse 23, it says, "Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and, after looking at himself, goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like." That is the tragedy of the narcissist. They have looked into the mirror of truth countless times, but always turned away before the reflection could change them. They mistake avoidance for strength, denial for confidence, manipulation for wisdom. But when heaven intervenes, the mirror stops letting them escape. The reflection begins to talk back. The very lies they told to others start echoing in their own mind. Their justifications no longer make sense. Their charm feels forced. Their confidence cracks under the weight of reality. Slowly, the false image begins to blur, and what remains beneath it terrifies them. This is the point where true transformation could begin, if they choose humility. But pride resists. The narcissist fears the mirror because it reveals what they have spent a lifetime hiding: brokenness, insecurity, and a desperate need for love they do not know how to receive. They have chased admiration instead of affection, control instead of connection, and power instead of peace. The reflection reminds them of the humanity they rejected in their pursuit of perfection. Psalm 36 verse 2 describes this perfectly. In their own eyes they flatter themselves too much to detect or hate their sin. As long as they can flatter themselves, the mirror stays fogged. But when the fog lifts, when truth clears the surface, they begin to see what heaven has always seen. And that moment, though painful, is grace. For some, the confrontation with truth leads to repentance. For others, it leads to deeper denial. They may project their guilt onto others, accuse the innocent, or rewrite history to preserve the illusion. But even then, the reflection lingers. It appears in dreams, in failed plans, in sudden moments of silence. It is the spiritual law of cause and effect. What is hidden must eventually come to light. You may not see this process, but it happens quietly. The narcissist will avoid mirrors of all kinds, not just literal ones, but emotional and spiritual ones too. They will avoid people who speak truth, avoid places that remind them of who they were, and avoid memories that expose their wrongs. But no one can outrun themselves forever. The reflection always finds its way back. For you, this knowledge is not a reason to gloat, it is a reason to release. You no longer have to carry the burden of trying to make them see what they refuse to see. That is not your job. It is the Spirit's. The same God who revealed the truth to you will reveal it to them in His timing. There is a beautiful verse in Psalm 51 verse 6. Behold, you desire truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part you make me to know wisdom. This verse reminds us that true healing begins when truth enters the hidden places of the heart. The narcissist fears this process because it demands surrender. Yet for you, this process has already begun. You faced your own mirror when you chose truth over illusion. That is why heaven could set you free. The mirror they fear is the same one that healed you. The reflection that terrifies them is the same one that restored your identity. What they run from, you have already faced, and that is why you are walking in peace while they remain in confusion. So when you think of them hiding from truth, remember this: every soul must one day meet its reflection. And when that day comes, no mask, no excuse, and no charm will be enough to hide what the eyes of heaven have already seen. You have already walked through that fire of revelation and survived it. That is why your light now burns brighter, and theirs flickers under the weight of denial. Why does heaven allow the proud to rise so high before their fall? Why are the narcissists of this world often surrounded by admiration, success, and influence before their foundations suddenly shatter? It seems unfair at first glance, but divine wisdom often moves in ways that the human mind cannot grasp. When heaven humbles the proud, it is never by chance. It is a sacred unraveling designed not to destroy, but to reveal. Pride has a language. It speaks through entitlement, manipulation, and the belief that one can play the role of God in another's life. The narcissist lives by that language. Their entire world is built upon the illusion of control, as if the universe itself bends to their will. But the book of Proverbs chapter 16 verse 18 reminds us clearly, pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. This is not merely poetic. It is a divine law. Every rise built upon deception must one day bow to truth. When heaven begins to humble the proud, it does not always happen in public view. Sometimes the breaking begins quietly through sleepless nights, inner torment, or the sudden loss of peace. Their words no longer charm. Their presence no longer commands the same reverence. The applause fades. The attention wanes. The very people they once manipulated begin to drift away. And in that isolation, heaven begins to whisper lessons they have long refused to hear. For years, the narcissist believed that they were untouchable, that no consequence could reach them. Yet the Lord is patient, giving space for repentance. When that mercy is refused, patience turns into correction. The proud are not merely punished, they are brought face to face with the reality they created for others. The same emotional prison they built for others slowly becomes their own. The same deceit they used to wound others begins to trap them. The story of King Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel, chapter 4, reveals this truth vividly. He stood at the height of power, boasting, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built by my mighty power?" And in that very moment, heaven interrupted his pride. His crown fell, his sanity broke, and he was humbled until he recognized that all power belongs to the Most High. Only after his pride was stripped away did restoration come. That is the strange mercy of God. He breaks to rebuild that in the same way. The narcissist's downfall is not always immediate, but it is inevitable. Their false confidence becomes their snare. They may attempt to recreate their old life, to reclaim control, to charm a new audience, but something inside them has shifted. Their words no longer carry the same power because truth now surrounds them. Heaven will use circumstances, failures, and relationships to press against their pride until it cracks open. What once brought them satisfaction now feels hollow. The energy they used to draw from others now drains them instead. They may even begin to question why nothing seems to work anymore. This is the unseen hand of divine justice at work, gentle, precise, and unrelenting. Meanwhile, for you, this humbling serves as confirmation. You are witnessing the fulfillment of Psalm 147 verse 6. The Lord sustains the humble, but casts the wicked to the ground. Every moment you spend doubting yourself, every tear you shed believing their version of reality, heaven saw it all. Now, the scales are being balanced, but not in cruelty. In clarity, the humbling of the proud reveals the sovereignty of truth. It shows that manipulation may last for a season, but not forever. That charm can deceive for a time, but not indefinitely. The same pride that elevated them now becomes the very instrument of their fall. Heaven's ways may seem strange, but they are perfectly just. God does not destroy. He exposes. He does not humiliate. He redeems through revelation. The narcissist's collapse is not only judgment, it is an invitation to see themselves clearly, perhaps for the first time in their life, but not all will accept the invitation. Many will resist, trying to rebuild their crumbling kingdom with the same old lies. Yet those lies will no longer hold power because the divine spotlight has been turned on. And once truth shines, darkness cannot hide. If you ever wonder why they seem to lose everything at once, status, relationships, reputation, it is because heaven does not remove one stone at a time. When correction begins, the entire structure built on pride must fall so that something new can be born. For you, the lesson is not vengeance. It is perspective. The fall of the proud reminds us that no one can outrun truth forever. It teaches that every person, no matter how powerful, must bow before the laws of heaven. So as you watch the proud stumble and the deceitful lose their grip, remember this: the same power that humbles them also lifts the humble. The same divine justice that dismantles pride also protects peace. Why did your healing feel so quiet? Why did it seem as if heaven led you into solitude while the narcissist continued to walk boldly in public, unashamed, unbroken, unbothered? It is because some of the most powerful works of restoration are done in secret. The world celebrates noise and visibility, but heaven often works behind closed doors, in the stillness of unseen moments, away from applause and judgment. When you left the storm of manipulation and deceit, there was no crowd waiting to comfort you. No one fully understood what you had endured. You were left standing alone, feeling invisible, misunderstood, and even doubting your own strength. But this was not abandonment, it was protection. The Lord led you into solitude, so your healing would not be corrupted by the voices that once deceived you. Isaiah chapter 45 verse 3 says, "I will give you treasures hidden in the darkness, secret riches." These treasures are not gold or silver, but wisdom, peace, and discernment born from pain. The world could not see what heaven was building inside you. While the narcissist sought attention and validation, Heaven was reshaping your soul in silence. The narcissist thrives on display. They want every story, every victory, every facade to be seen. But divine restoration is different. It happens slowly, quietly, and deeply. Your healing was not a show. It was surgery. The Spirit was removing every lie you had believed about yourself, stitching the torn parts of your identity, and breathing peace into the wounds that once bled confusion. It was in those long, lonely nights that your faith deepened. You began to hear the whisper of truth in ways you never could when noise surrounded you. The silence that once felt unbearable became sacred. It became the very place where heaven rebuilt your strength. The book of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 6 teaches, "When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." That same principle applies to healing. What happens in secret is seen by heaven, and the reward will come in its time. The narcissist may believe they have won because they appear unshaken. But what they cannot see is that every day of your silence is a declaration of strength. You are no longer reacting, defending, or explaining. You are simply becoming. You are growing roots beneath the surface that will one day produce fruit too strong to be uprooted again. Your healing had to remain hidden because premature exposure can attract sabotage. If others had seen the early stages of your restoration, they might have doubted it, questioned it, or tried to pull you back into the same patterns you escaped. But heaven knew that your peace needed to be guarded until it was mature enough to stand on its own. Think of the butterfly in its cocoon. It does not break free until its wings are strong enough to fly. If someone were to cut the cocoon too soon, the wings would never develop and the butterfly would never soar. That is why your isolation was sacred. It was heaven's way of ensuring your wings would not break again. There were days when you wanted to be seen, to be heard, to be vindicated. You wanted others to understand what had happened and to recognize your truth. But vindication that comes too early is often shallow. The true reward is not public validation. It is internal transformation. Heaven was not preparing you for revenge, it was preparing you for peace. And now, that peace has become your quiet strength. You no longer need to prove your worth, defend your truth, or chase understanding from those who were never meant to comprehend your journey. The evidence of your healing is not in what others see, it is in how you now live. You smile differently. You rest differently. You trust differently. There is no longer a desperate hunger for validation, because the emptiness that once defined you has been filled with divine assurance. What they once took from you, heaven has restored in abundance. Psalm 91 verse 1 speaks of this sacred privacy. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. That shadow is your shelter. The secret place is where your healing happened, where your identity was reborn, and where your strength now resides. Let the world remain unaware. Let them misunderstand your silence. Those who heal quietly are the ones heaven uses loudly later. There is a battle that no one else can see, a war that begins not in the world around you, but within the thoughts that try to rule you. After breaking free from the narcissist's control, many believe the war is over, but in truth, it has only changed its shape. The real fight begins when silence replaces the chaos, when peace becomes possible, but your mind still echoes with old lies. The narcissist may no longer speak to you, but their voice still tries to linger in your memory. Every whisper of doubt, every wave of guilt, every sudden moment of self-condemnation is not your voice. It is the residue of manipulation trying to pull you back into bondage. The enemy knows that even if he cannot control your life anymore, he can still try to occupy your thoughts. This is why the mind becomes the final battlefield. 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 5 says, "We take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ." That verse is not simply a suggestion, it is a survival command for the soul that has escaped spiritual abuse. The narcissist once shaped your world through distortion, convincing you to question your own worth, your memory, your goodness. Even after leaving, those distortions still echo. You may find yourself replaying arguments, wondering if you overreacted, if you should have stayed quieter, or if somehow you were the problem. But that is the old programming speaking. Heaven has already declared that your liberation is real. Yet freedom must be protected. The narcissist built pathways in your thoughts, small roots of guilt and fear designed to bring you back. Now, each time you resist those thoughts, you are not only healing, you are reclaiming sacred ground within yourself. The unseen war is not fought with anger or revenge, but with truth and patience. You will notice the enemy's tactics are subtle. Sometimes it comes as nostalgia memories of better days when things seemed calm. But those were not better days. They were moments of deception wrapped in temporary comfort. Sometimes the attack comes as loneliness, a whisper that says, "You will never find anyone who understands you like they did." But that is a lie meant to keep you tied to pain disguised as connection. The truth is that real connection does not require control, and genuine love never leaves you questioning your worth. Philippians chapter 4 verse 8 gives a battle plan for this unseen war. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. This verse is not only about positive thinking, it is about spiritual resistance. When you fill your mind with truth, deception loses its power. Every time you replace a memory of pain with a declaration of peace, you win another victory. Every time you refuse to rehearse an old wound, the enemy's grip loosens. You may not see this battle in the physical world, but heaven does. Each thought surrendered to truth is seen as an act of faith. Each moment you choose peace over panic is a declaration that your mind belongs not to the past, but to divine renewal. The unseen war also reveals how healing is not only emotional but spiritual. What the narcissist tried to destroy was not just your confidence but your spiritual discernment. They wanted you to stop trusting the quiet voice inside that warned you when something was wrong. They replaced that voice with their own narrative. But now the Spirit of truth is restoring that inner guidance. You are learning to listen again, not to the voice of fear, but to the whisper of peace. That whisper may be faint at first, but it grows louder with every moment you choose stillness. Isaiah chapter 26 verse 3 says, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." This is the promise that ends the war. Perfect peace does not mean absence of thought. It means your thoughts are now aligned with divine truth instead of human deception. When your mind is steadfast, no whisper of the past can unseat you. The narcissist's power fades not because they change, but because your awareness has changed. Their voice loses authority because your spirit no longer agrees with it. That is the ultimate victory, to walk through old memories and feel nothing but peace. The unseen war ends not with a shout, but with silence. And in that silence, heaven declares you free. But freedom is not the end of your journey. It is the preparation for restoration. For when your mind is finally still, heaven can begin to build something new inside you, something no one will ever take again. After seasons of constant tension, endless proving, and emotional survival, rest can feel foreign, almost wrong. When you have lived too long in the storm, peace feels unnatural. Your body expects conflict. Your mind searches for the next problem to solve. Even silence becomes suspicious, as if something bad must be hiding in the quiet. But this is what happens when the soul has been trained by chaos. Rest does not come easily after years of walking on emotional glass. Yet this is exactly what heaven is now teaching you, to rest without guilt. Psalm 23 verse 2 says, "He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters." Notice the phrase, "He makes me lie down." Sometimes the shepherd has to guide his sheep into rest because they no longer know how to stop moving. You, too, may have forgotten how to rest. You were conditioned to earn love, to prove worth, to fix problems that were never yours to fix. Rest now feels like laziness, stillness feels like danger, and peace feels undeserved. But heaven's command is gentle and firm. Lie down, rest, breathe. Let the quiet wash over you. Nothing terrible will happen when you stop striving. The world will not collapse because you decided to heal. The narcissist thrived on your exhaustion. They drew strength from your constant effort, your endless giving, your unguarded empathy. They trained you to feel responsible for their emotions, to carry guilt for their mistakes. So when you finally broke free, rest felt like rebellion. You might have caught yourself thinking, maybe I should reach out. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I should fix this. But those thoughts are the residue of old control. They are not your truth. True rest begins when you stop apologizing for choosing peace over chaos. Hebrews chapter 4 verse 9 says, "There remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God." That rest is not one day a week. It is a state of being. It is a life posture that says, "I trust that heaven is handling what I cannot." The narcissist taught you to fear that trust, to believe that if you let go, everything would fall apart. But in letting go, you finally made room for heaven to hold what was never meant for you to carry down at first. Rest may feel uncomfortable. You may find yourself reaching for your phone, checking if they have messaged, or replaying conversations in your mind. This is not failure, it is recovery. You are learning how to exist without chaos. Each day of stillness rewires your spirit. Slowly, the muscles of your mind begin to relax. Your breathing deepens. Your thoughts quiet. That silence is not emptiness, it is the voice of peace finally being heard. In rest, you also rediscover who you are without the roles that trauma forced upon you. You are no longer the rescuer, the explicable, the forgiver of endless offenses. You are simply a soul at rest. You no longer chase closure because you have realized that peace is not something others can give you. It is something heaven plants within you. Sometimes, guilt will try to creep back in. It will whisper, "You should be doing more." But remember Matthew chapter 11 verse 28, where Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That is not a suggestion, it is a promise. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to do nothing for a while. You are allowed to heal without producing, without explaining, without proving. The world glorifies busyness, but heaven glorifies restoration. As you rest, you will notice subtle miracles. The anxiety that once kept you awake begins to fade. The heaviness in your chest loosens. The tears that used to fall from confusion now flow from gratitude. You start to see that rest was never weakness, it was protection. The same God who delivered you from chaos is now teaching you how to live in peace. That peace may feel new, even fragile, but it is sacred. Protected. There will be moments when rest looks like quiet evenings alone, when no one calls and nothing dramatic happens. Those moments are not empty, they are holy. You are learning that your worth is not measured by how much you endure, but by how deeply you allow heaven to restore you. Soon, rest will no longer feel strange. It will feel natural. The stillness that once frightened you will become your sanctuary. You will wake up one morning and realize that the anxiety that used to follow you has finally let go. The storm is gone, and peace is not just visiting, it has taken residence. This is the beauty of divine recovery. It begins with exhaustion, continues with surrender, and ends with rest. You are now in that sacred middle where heaven teaches you to trust the quiet again. So close your eyes, breathe slowly, and remember rest is not a reward for doing enough. It is the birthright of the redeemed. And once you learn to rest without guilt, the past will lose its final hold. Because nothing terrifies darkness more than a peaceful soul. There will come a time when the past tries to visit you, not as a person, but as a memory. It might arrive quietly in the middle of a peaceful day, or suddenly in the night when you thought you had finally moved on. The scenes replay in your mind, the arguments, the manipulation, the gaslighting, and for a moment, it feels as though you are back in that same place again. This is the moment when healing is tested, not lost. You are not going backward. You are being reminded of how far you have come. Healing does not erase memory, it transforms it. The wounds that once bled now become reminders of strength. But sometimes, even scars can ache in the cold of memory. And when they do, you must remember that the past no longer has power unless you feed it. The book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 18 says, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past." This verse does not ask you to erase what happened. It asks you to stop living there. The narcissist trained your mind to stay trapped in cycles of guilt and confusion, to analyze every word, every mistake, every moment where they made you believe you were wrong. That cycle is the enemy's favorite tool, because if he can keep you replaying the past, he can stop you from stepping into your future. When memories haunt you, do not resist them with fear. Meet them with truth. Speak to them as you would to a shadow. You no longer belong here. The past cannot argue with someone who knows the truth. You survived what tried to destroy you. You walked out of the storm that was meant to consume you. Every memory that resurfaces is only proof of what you have overcome. At times, nostalgia may disguise itself as longing. You might remember a moment of laughter or tenderness and wonder if things could have been different. But remember this. Even chaos has calm moments, and even control wears the mask of care. The narcissist's temporary kindness was never love, it was strategy. They knew when to give just enough warmth to keep you hopeful, just enough attention to make you stay. That was not love. That was control painted in color. Forgiveness is your armor against these haunting memories. It is not agreement with what they did, it is release from their grip. Colossians chapter 3, verse 13 says, "Forgive as the Lord forgave you." Forgiveness is not a favor to them. It is a weapon for you. It breaks the emotional chain that ties you to their energy. You are not forgiving because they deserve it. You are forgiving because you deserve peace. Sometimes, you may not even be haunted by the person, but by who you were when you were with them. The version of you that tolerated lies, ignored warnings, or kept hoping things would change. Do not despise that version of yourself. That was the you who did the best they could with the understanding they had. Be gentle with that version, for it carried you through the fire until you were strong enough to leave it. You are not that person anymore, but you can thank them for surviving when escape felt impossible. There is a kind of memory that heaven turns into wisdom. Each time you recall the past and choose not to respond with anger or guilt, that memory loses more of its poison. It becomes a testimony. Revelation chapter 12 verse 11 says, "They overcame by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony." Every healed memory becomes a testimony, a declaration that what once ruled you no longer defines you. The haunting will lessen with time. At first, it may visit often, but each time you respond with peace instead of pain, it grows weaker. One day, you will think of what happened and feel only gratitude for your freedom. That day will not be loud or dramatic. It will be quiet, calm, and holy. You will realize that your heart no longer trembles when you remember their name. You will realize that what once broke you has now built you into something stronger, steadier, and wiser. Even now, the Spirit is teaching you how to manage these moments. When the old voice whispers lies, respond with Scripture. When old feelings rise, anchor yourself in prayer. Philippians chapter 4 verse 7 says, "And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." That peace acts like a spiritual shield. It does not stop memories from coming, but it guards your heart so those memories cannot wound you again. Do not fear the past. The fact that you can remember without reacting means healing is already winning. Memories may visit, but they no longer have a home. You have already stepped into new light, and darkness cannot follow where peace resides. So when the ghosts of old pain try to whisper, stand tall in silence and let your peace answer for you. The past will fade because truth has taken its place. And once the memories stop haunting you, they will begin to serve you, reminding you that even in your weakest moments, heaven never let go. Sometimes what feels like the deepest betrayal is actually the beginning of your transformation. There are moments in life when you look at what was taken from you, and it feels like nothing remains but ashes. You ask yourself, why would this happen? Why would someone I loved be allowed to wound me this deeply? Yet hidden beneath that pain is often the very thing that sets you free. The betrayal did not come to destroy you. It came to reveal who you truly are without the illusion that once blinded you. The book of Genesis chapter 50 verse 20 tells us, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." What they meant to break you actually became the tool heaven used to rebuild you. When the narcissist betrayed you through lies, deceit, manipulation, or emotional abandonment, it was not just an act of cruelty. It was a revelation. Their mask slipped and you finally saw the truth. The person you were loyal to, the one you sacrificed so much for, was never capable of giving the same love in return. That realization hurt because it tore through your hope, but it also cut through illusion. The truth may wound, but it also heals. It may burn, but it purifies. Every betrayal is a teacher. It shows you what love is not. It teaches you where you gave too much and where you must now guard your peace. It reminds you that not everyone who says, "I love you," carries love in their heart. Proverbs chapter 27 verse 6 says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but deceitful are the kisses of an enemy." You learned through the pain that not all affection is genuine and not all closeness is safe. That lesson, as painful as it is, protects you from far greater harm in the future. The narcissist's betrayal often carries layers of manipulation. Sometimes they make you doubt your own reality, or even blame yourself for their wrongdoings. They project their faults onto you so deeply that when the betrayal finally surfaces, you question if it was really betrayal at all. But the truth is not confused. The moment you stopped excusing their behavior and started seeing things as they were, the healing began. Truth always begins the moment denial ends. You may not see it yet, but the betrayal was also the door to your next season. If they had not rejected you, you might have never discovered your own worth. If they had not walked away, you might have never learned that peace can exist without their presence. The rejection was protection. Psalm chapter 34 verse 18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Every tear you cried became a seed for strength. Every night you prayed for answers was a moment heaven whispered, "Wait, you are not losing, you are being refined." The greatest gift hidden in betrayal is clarity. You begin to see not only who they were, but also who you are. You realize that love does not beg, chase, or shrink. Love does not manipulate. It does not punish silence with silence or kindness with cruelty. The narcissist's betrayal teaches you this sacred truth, that your value was never defined by their blindness. You were always worthy. You were simply trying to prove your worth to someone who could not see value beyond control. There is also divine irony in this process. The one who betrayed you unknowingly became a tool for your spiritual growth. Through their cruelty, you discovered compassion. Through their deceit, you learned discernment. Through their rejection, you learned self-acceptance. They thought they were breaking you, but they were actually shaping you for a higher purpose. Romans chapter 8 verse 28 reminds us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him." All things includes heartbreak, lies, abandonment, and even betrayal. Forgiveness, once again, becomes the bridge between pain and peace. When you forgive, you do not excuse what they did. You simply choose not to carry their darkness any longer. Forgiveness breaks the invisible chain that ties your soul to their energy. It allows you to walk freely without bitterness. Forgiveness says, "I will not let what hurt me define the rest of my life." It may take time to see the gift clearly, but one day you will look back and realize that the betrayal was the moment heaven redirected your path. What you thought was an ending was really a divine detour. The people who left were never meant to walk with you into your healing. The door they closed was the same door through which peace entered, You were not destroyed, you were delivered. The betrayal only revealed what had already been true. You were always loved by heaven, even when you were unloved by man. The wound became wisdom. The pain became purpose. And the betrayal that once broke your heart will one day be the story you tell to remind others that not all loss is loss. Some losses are deliverance in disguise, because when the curtain of deceit falls, the truth finally steps into the light. And in that light, you will see yourself clearly not as a victim, but as a survivor of divine design. The betrayal was not the end of your story. It was the moment your real story began. There is a quiet place that exists after you leave the narcissist, but before full healing begins. It is the wilderness. You are no longer in bondage, but you have not yet reached peace. It feels like walking through a vast desert with no map, where some days you feel strong and sure, and others you question if freedom was worth the loneliness. But this is the sacred middle ground, the space where transformation happens. The book of Exodus chapter 13 verse 17 reminds us that when the Lord led the Israelites out of Egypt, He did not take them on the shortest route, but through the wilderness. The long road was not punishment, it was protection. And so it is with you. The wilderness between leaving and healing is not a delay. It is divine preparation. When you first step out of the toxic cycle, silence feels strange. You were used to noise, the arguments, the control, the emotional games. When that noise disappears, the silence almost echoes. It feels empty, but that emptiness is not absence, it is space. Space for your soul to breathe again. The narcissist once filled every corner of your mind, and now heaven begins clearing that clutter so that your thoughts can rest. Do not fear this quiet. It is where your spirit starts to recover its voice. In the wilderness, the enemy often whispers that you made a mistake by leaving. He reminds you of moments of comfort, tries to paint the past in warmer colors, makes you wonder if maybe, somehow, it could have been fixed. But remember, even the Israelites wanted to return to Egypt when they were hungry and tired. Exodus chapter 16 verse 3 records their words, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted." They romanticized captivity because freedom required faith. You may also find yourself missing the illusion of safety that came with your old pain. But comfort is not the same as peace. Bondage may be familiar, but it is still bondage. The wilderness is also where you face your own heart. You begin to see patterns you ignored, wounds you buried, and fears you carried for years. It can be painful, but this is where honesty heals. The narcissist might have made you doubt your instincts, but now you are learning to trust them again. You are learning to recognize your worth, not because someone praises you, but because heaven whispers it directly into your soul. You are being reintroduced to yourself, the version you were before manipulation dimmed your light. Sometimes, this stage feels endless. You may cry without knowing why. You may wake up feeling heavy even when no one is hurting you anymore. That is because healing is not a straight line, it is a holy unraveling. Psalm chapter 34 verse 17 says, "The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles." Every tear you shed in this wilderness is seen. Every moment you feel forgotten is counted. You are not wandering. You are being led. Even when you do not see the map, the shepherd knows the way. During this time, isolation can feel sharp. You may look around and realize that few people truly understand what you've endured. Some might tell you to move on quickly, not realizing how deep the wounds go. But your healing has its own timing. Do not rush it to comfort others. The same God who led you out will also lead you through. There's purpose in every pause dot in this wilderness. Heaven begins to teach you new disciplines, how to rest, how to pray without panic, how to find joy in simple moments. You start to feel peace not because life is perfect, but because you are learning to let go of control. This season strips away dependence on external validation and replaces it with divine trust. What once felt like loneliness becomes communion. What once felt like emptiness becomes presence. And though it may not seem like it now, there will come a day when you will look around and realize that the wilderness was never a place of punishment, it was a place of preparation. It was where you learned who you are without the voices of manipulation echoing in your ear. It was where you learned that your worth was not negotiable, and your peace not disposable. Deuteronomy chapter 8 verse 2 says, "Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years, to humble and test you in order to know what was in your heart." This wilderness is doing the same. It is revealing what remains after the pain. What truth still stands when illusions fall? You are being refined into someone who cannot be deceived as easily. Someone who knows peace so deeply that chaos can no longer control them. So if you find yourself in that in-between space, do not despair. This is not the end of your story. The wilderness always leads to the promised land. You are closer to healing than you realize, and every step, even the slow ones, is sacred. You are walking toward wholeness, and soon, this very wilderness that once felt endless will become the foundation of your strength. There will come a season when the silence that once felt unbearable will turn into peace so deep that it will shock you. The tears that once fell in darkness will become the rivers that water your new life. Because the Lord is a restorer, and He does not simply return what was taken, He multiplies it. Joel chapter 2 verse 25 declares, "I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten." Those years of manipulation, confusion, and emotional exhaustion were not wasted. Heaven keeps records of every sleepless night, every cry unheard, every piece of your soul that you thought was lost. And when God restores, He restores completely. Restoration is not always about people coming back. It is about your spirit returning to its rightful state, whole, confident, peaceful. The narcissist tried to steal your sense of identity, your joy, your trust in love, and your confidence in your own worth. But what was stolen was never truly gone. It was simply buried under lies. Restoration begins the moment truth becomes louder than deception. The book of Zechariah chapter 9 verse 12 says, "Return to your fortress, you prisoners of hope. Even now I announce that I will restore twice as much to you." That fortress is your faith. The moment you return to it, restoration begins to unfold quietly and steadily. At first, it will not come through dramatic miracles. It will come in whispers. You will notice that you laugh again without guilt. You will realize that silence feels like safety now, not punishment. You will find yourself smiling at simple things, the sunrise, the sound of rain, the quiet hum of peace in your heart. This is how restoration begins, slowly, softly, powerfully. The Spirit rebuilds what was torn down, not through noise, but through stillness. The narcissist's control created a famine in your soul. You were starved of affirmation, truth, and gentleness. You learned to survive on crumbs of affection. But restoration teaches you abundance again. It shows you that love is not something you must beg for. It is something that flows naturally from healthy hearts. You begin to see relationships differently. You no longer chase people who drain you, because you finally understand that peace is a form of love too. There is also restoration in perspective. You start to see the purpose behind the pain. You realize that the heartbreak taught you empathy, that the betrayal sharpened your discernment, that your wilderness birthed wisdom. Every season that felt like loss was actually sowing strength into your future. Romans chapter 5 verse 3 reminds us, "We glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character. And character, hope. Your hope is not naive anymore, it is anchored. It no longer depends on who stays or who leaves, but on who you have become through it. All restoration also means reclaiming your voice. The narcissist silenced it with fear, mockery, or manipulation, but now heaven restores it with authority. You begin to speak again, not to defend yourself, but to declare truth. You start setting boundaries without guilt, walking away from chaos without apology. That is restoration in motion. The strength that once seemed lost has returned, and this time it is grounded in wisdom, not reaction. And though restoration is spiritual, it often manifests in physical ways. New friendships, new opportunities, new joy. You may notice that your surroundings change to match your inner peace. The same energy that once attracted chaos now attracts calm. The light within you grows too bright for darkness to hide in. You no longer need closure from those who hurt you because peace has become your closure. Sometimes God restores through time alone. He will isolate you from noise so that He can rebuild your heart quietly. Other times, He brings new people into your life who mirror the gentleness and patience you once gave away too freely. These divine connections remind you that love still exists and that it can be pure, patient, and kind. The narcissist made love seem like control. But restoration teaches you that love, in its true form, never manipulates or demands. And one day, without realizing when it happened, you will look in the mirror and recognize the reflection staring back at you. The light in your eyes will be stronger. Your posture will be steadier. The fear that once lived in your chest will have disappeared. You will see that you are no longer surviving, you are thriving. What once was broken has been made whole, and what once was stolen has been returned with interest. You will understand then why it had to happen, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the silence. Because through it all, you were being shaped for this restoration. You were being prepared for a peace you would not have understood before the storm. And now that it has arrived, it will not leave. The narcissist may have taken pieces of your past, but heaven has given you an entirely new future. Restoration is not about what you lost, it is about who you have become. And so this is the gift of divine restoration, not the return of what was, but the revelation of what always could be when you are finally free. There will come a sacred moment when your heart no longer flinches at kindness, when love no longer feels like danger, and when peace no longer feels foreign. This moment arrives quietly, often after the storm has long passed, and you are simply sitting in the calm of a new day. You begin to realize that your spirit is not broken. It was only bruised, waiting for safety to return. And slowly, it does. This is the miracle of recovery. The day your soul finally recognizes peace again. At first, it may feel strange. You have lived so long in emotional tension that calmness almost feels like emptiness. When no one is criticizing you, you wonder if something is wrong. When no one is watching your every move, you question if you should be doing more. These are the echoes of trauma, the lingering noise of old bondage. But over time, those echoes fade. The silence that once frightened you begins to heal you. Philippians chapter 4 verse 9 says, "Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you." This peace is not temporary or shallow. It is the kind that wraps around your heart. Like a soft blanket after a long night in the cold, your spirit begins to remember how to rest. You start trusting yourself again. The overthinking slows. The constant fear of disappointing someone fades. You no longer need to perform for love or prove your worth through endless giving. You understand now that peace is not earned, it is received. You begin to see that love, the real kind, feels like safety. It is not a chase or a test or a battlefield. It is gentle. It is patient. It is present. Your body also begins to remember. You sleep deeper. You breathe easier. Your shoulders relax because you are no longer waiting for the next explosion or manipulation. Even your dreams start changing. What once was filled with chaos becomes quiet. This is what healing does. It not only restores the mind, but also teaches the body that it no longer lives in danger. Psalm chapter 4 verse 8 says, "In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety." There will be days when the old pain still knocks at the door of your memory, but peace will answer instead of fear. You will not have to force forgiveness or try to forget. You will simply no longer feel tied to the pain. That is when you know healing has taken root. You will notice how you speak differently too. You no longer tell stories with bitterness or anger. You tell them with understanding. What once was a wound has now become wisdom. And as your spirit grows stronger, you will attract what reflects your new peace. People who honor your boundaries, who speak truth with gentleness, who give without strings attached. Relationships that once felt impossible will now feel natural because your healed spirit will recognize love without suspicion. Where once you tolerated chaos, you now protect your calm. Where once you doubted your intuition, you now trust it as a gift from heaven. Peace also changes your relationship with yourself. You stop judging your journey for taking so long. You realize that healing is not about forgetting the pain, but about learning to live beyond it. You begin to celebrate small victories, the days you wake up grateful instead of fearful, the moments you say no without guilt, the times you smile for no reason other than joy has quietly returned. You understand that peace is not an event but a way of being. It is heaven's natural rhythm flowing through your life. Isaiah chapter 26 verse 3 promises, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." Trust becomes the foundation of your new life, not trust in others, but trust in divine timing, in your own growth, in the truth that peace is not fragile. It cannot be stolen like before, because now it lives within you, guarded by wisdom and discernment. The narcissist once tried to convince you that without them, you would never find happiness. But here you are, breathing, growing, thriving, discovering that peace was not in them, it was in you all along. They tried to take credit for your joy, but heaven had already written it into your design. No one can erase what God has written in the soul, and perhaps the most beautiful sign that your spirit has recognized peace again is this: you no longer wish them harm. You no longer need revenge or validation. You look at the past and feel compassion, not bitterness. You bless them in your heart and move on, because peace no longer needs an audience. It just is that you have become the living proof that even after the deepest pain, peace is possible. And once your spirit remembers peace, it will never settle for chaos again. There comes a moment when all the pain, confusion, and silence finally make sense. It is not sudden, it unfolds like dawn after a long and weary night. The light does not rush. It simply arrives, steady and certain, as if it had been waiting for you all along. You look around and realize that the storm has passed. The ground beneath you is still, and for the first time in what feels like years, your heart is quiet. Not numb, not fearful, just quiet. That quiet is peace. That peace is the proof that you have survived everything that was meant to destroy you. You once believed that healing would be a dramatic moment, a single day when everything would suddenly feel better. But now you know that healing is a slow sunrise. It happens in small steps, every time you forgive instead of resent, every time you rest instead of worry, every time you choose peace over chaos. You have walked through the valley, and now you are beginning to see the mountaintop. Psalm chapter 30 verse 5 reminds us, "Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning." And now, beloved soul, your morning has come. Look back, just for a moment, at what you have endured. You walked away from someone who fed on your light, who made love feel like labor, and who taught you to doubt your own reflection. You crawled through nights of loneliness, prayed through tears, and questioned your strength more times than you can count. Yet here you are, still standing, still breathing, still becoming. That is grace in its purest form. Grace carried you when you could not carry yourself. Grace whispered your name when shame tried to silence it. And grace is what brings you into this new season, now a season not of survival, but of renewal. There is something sacred about standing on the other side of pain. It does not mean you forget what happened. It means you can look at it without trembling. The scars remain, but they no longer sting. They remind you of how fiercely you fought to live. They tell a story not of defeat, but of resurrection. The same way Christ rose from the grave, you too have risen from the tomb of emotional captivity. You are living proof that resurrection is not just a miracle of the body, but of the soul. Isaiah chapter 61 verse 3 promises that the Lord will give a crown of beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, and a garment of praise for the spirit of despair. Look at your life now, and you will see that promise being fulfilled. The ashes of betrayal have become wisdom. The tears of grief have watered the soil of peace. And where despair once lived, joy has quietly made a home. You may not even realize it, but you smile differently now. It is softer, freer, real. You will find that the closer you walk with peace, the less you need to explain yourself. You no longer chase closure because you have found it in the truth. You no longer argue to be understood because understanding is no longer your mission pieces. And the people who are meant for you will see that peace and protect it, not challenge it. You will attract hearts that mirror your calm, not ones that feed on your chaos. Your life will never be the same again, and that is the miracle. You are no longer the person who tolerated manipulation, who confused control for love, who feared walking alone. You are wiser now, kinder to yourself, more discerning with your energy. You have become someone who can love deeply without losing yourself, who can forgive without reopening the door to abuse, who can walk in grace without apology. That transformation is the greatest victory of all. As you step forward into this new chapter, do not rush. Let peace guide you one gentle step at a time. Let your heart breathe in the safety it has found. Let gratitude fill the spaces that were once filled with fear. And when memories of the past try to whisper that you are still broken, remind them softly, I am healed. The book of Revelation chapter 21 verse 4 says, He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. That promise is not only for eternity, it begins now within you. The old order of your pain, your confusion, your captivity, it is past. You are walking in a new order now, peace, freedom, and love. Before you rest tonight, let your heart remember this truth. You were never abandoned in the storm. The light was with you all along, even when the clouds were too heavy to see it. And now that you stand in that light, you are no longer the same. You have walked through darkness and found your dawn. You have traded sorrow for wisdom, pain for power, captivity for freedom. You have become the living testimony that no darkness can extinguish a light that heaven has chosen to rise again.